Left me out of his inheritance. Then I found what Grandpa hid in the safe. Liam Foster, a university history professor, always believed his family was close. But everything changes at the reading of his grandfather's will. A stern, silent, war veteran and owner of an old countryside home in New Haven. While his charismatic cousin Gavin is named the sole heir, Liam receives nothing. No letter, no keepsake, just an unsettling silence and averted eyes. But when Liam visits the house one last time before it's sold, he discovers a hidden key behind a loose floorboard in his grandfather's office. It leads to a concealed safe, and inside he finds documents, old photographs, and a secret that changes everything. A secret that not only explains the apparent rejection, but may rewrite the family's entire legacy. With the help of Emily, a sharp-minded local archivist, Liam begins to piece together the mystery his grandfather left behind. The deeper they dig, the clearer it becomes. Liam wasn't forgotten. He was chosen for something much greater, in a story woven with silent betrayals, twisted loyalties, and carefully crafted revenge. Liam will learn that sometimes, what you inherit isn't wealth, it's purpose. If you're intrigued by stories full of mystery, hidden truths, and unexpected twists, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and be the first to follow Liam's journey into the past that could change everything. Chapter 1. The Wilther. Old grandfather clock in the corner of Attorney Williams' office ticked with merciless precision, each sound reverberating through the room like a tiny judgment. Liam Foster shifted uncomfortably in the high-backed leather chair, the collar of his Oxford shirt suddenly feeling too tight. Outside, New Haven's autumn painted the trees in brilliant crimson and gold. But inside, the atmosphere was as cold as January. He glanced around the room. His Aunt Margaret dabbed at her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief, one that Grandpa Robert had given her last Christmas. Uncle James sat stone-faced beside her, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder. And then there was Gavin, Liam's cousin, staring intently at Attorney Williams with the same focused expression he once wore before championship football games. The golden boy always had been. As we proceed with the reading of Robert Foster's last will and testament, Attorney Williams began, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. I'd like to remind everyone that these were Mr. Foster's explicit wishes, recorded when he was of sound mind and body. Liam nodded, swallowing hard. 2 weeks had passed since they'd lowered Grandpa Robert into the ground, a decorated veteran, a respected community figure, and the family patriarch who had shaped their lives from his colonial-style house on Evergreen Avenue, the house where Liam had spent countless summers exploring the attic, where he'd learned to play chess on the weathered board by the bay window, where he'd last seen his grandfather alive. To my daughter, Margaret, and her husband, James, Attorney Williams read, I leave my summer property in Cape Cod, along with the sum of $300,000. Margaret's quiet sobs grew slightly louder. James squeezed her shoulder, the corner of his mouth lifting almost imperceptibly. To my grandson, Gavin James Foster, Williams continued, I leave my primary residence at 1842 Evergreen Avenue in New Haven, Connecticut, including all furniture, personal effects, and the surrounding property. Additionally, I bequeath to him my investment portfolio, currently valued at approximately $1.2 million, and my collection of historical artifacts. Liam's heart sank, though he wasn't entirely surprised. Gavin had always been Grandpa's favorite, the athletic one, the charming one, the one who followed in Grandpa's footsteps by joining the military before eventually taking a corporate job. Still, Liam had hoped for something. Perhaps the pocket watch they'd spent hours discussing, or even his grandfather's book collection that had inspired Liam's own career in history. Attorney Williams cleared his throat. Flipping to the next page, Liam straightened, waiting for his name. The remainder of my estate and holdings, Williams concluded, shall be donated to the Veterans Memorial Foundation of Connecticut. The silence that followed was deafening. Liam waited, his eyes fixed on the attorney. That's all, he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Williams glanced up, his expression professionally neutral. "That concludes the will, Mr. Foster." "There's nothing for Liam?" Aunt Margaret asked, seeming genuinely surprised. "I'm afraid not, Mrs. Mitchell. There is no specific bequest to Liam Foster in this document." Gavin shifted in his seat, looking at Liam for the first time since they'd entered the office. "I'm sure Grandpa had his reasons," he said, his voice carrying that familiar tone of forced sympathy that had always made Liam's skin crawl. "Yes," Uncle James added quickly. "Robert was always very deliberate in his decisions." Liam felt the room closing in around him. 33 years of birthday cards, signed with "Proud of you, Grandpa Robert," of late-night conversations about history and ethics, of being told he was so much like his grandfather in the ways that mattered most. And in the end, nothing. Not even a mention. "If there are no further questions about the will," Williams said, gathering his papers, "I'll need signatures from each of you to acknowledge its reading." As they filed out of the office 40 minutes later, paperwork complete, Liam lingered in the hallway. The family portrait that had hung in Grandpa's study for decades now flashed in his mind. Grandpa standing behind a young Gavin with his hands on his shoulders, while Liam stood slightly to the side, his own smile hesitant. "Hey," Gavin's voice broke through his thoughts. That was ... unexpected. Liam looked up at his cousin 6 feet of perfect American pedigree, from his square jaw to his confident stance. "Was it?" he asked quietly. "Look, I know you two were close in your own way," Gavin said, jingling the car keys in his pocket. "If there's anything of his you want, books or whatever, just let me know. I'm not planning to keep everything." The generosity felt worse than being ignored. "Thanks," Liam managed. "We're heading over to the house now," Gavin continued. "Mum wants to start sorting things. You should come." "I have classes to prepare for," Liam lied. It was Saturday, and his next lecture wasn't until Wednesday. Gavin nodded, clearly relieved. "Right? The professor gig. Well, doors open if you change your mind." He clapped Liam on the shoulder, the universal gesture of men who don't know what else to say before. Joining his parents by the elevator, Liam watched them go, then turned toward the stairs. The October air hit him as he emerged onto the street, crisp and biting. He pulled his jacket tighter and began walking with no particular destination in mind. Why had his grandfather left him nothing? Not even a letter of explanation. It made no sense. Just last Christmas, they'd stayed up until 2 in the morning discussing the parallels between ancient Roman succession disputes and modern inheritance conflicts. Grandpa had seemed genuinely interested in Liam's research, in his teaching position at the university, in his life, or had that all been polite fiction? The thought settled in Liam's chest, like a cold weight. 3 blocks later, he found himself staring up at the wrought iron gates of the old cemetery where they'd buried Grandpa Robert. Without conscious decision, he entered, following the winding path to the fresh grave with its temporary marker. The permanent headstone was still being carved, another decision Liam hadn't been consulted on. "I don't understand," he said quietly. To the rectangle of disturbed earth. Was I wrong about everything? Only the distant sound of traffic answered him. A squirrel darted across a neighboring grave, stopping to look at Liam with bright, curious eyes before disappearing into the underbrush. He stood there until the late afternoon shadows stretched long across the gravestones. When he finally left, the question still echoed in his mind, unanswered. What Liam couldn't know, as he walked away from the cemetery with his hands buried deep in his pockets, was that back at 1842 Evergreen Avenue, behind a loose board in his grandfather's study, lay a brass key that would unlock more than just a hidden safe. It would unlock the truth. If you're captivated by family secrets and the mysteries that lie beneath the surface of seemingly normal lives, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. This story is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what Liam discovers next about his grandfather's true intentions. Hit that subscribe button now because some inheritances are worth more than money. Chapter 2. The Discovery, 3 days after the reading of the will. Liam stood on the porch of 1842 Evergreen Avenue, his knuckles hovering inches from the oak. door. The house looked exactly as it always had. The white colonial with black shutters, the meticulously maintained garden now fading into autumn. The brass knocker polished to a shine even in Grandpa Robert's final months. Only now, it wasn't his grandfather's house anymore. It was Gavin's. He finally knocked, adjusting the leather messenger bag slung across his body. Inside was a stack of midterm papers he'd been meaning to grade, a convenient excuse to cut the visit short if needed. The door swung open to reveal Aunt Margaret, her face lighting up with genuine surprise. "Liam, I was just saying to James this morning that we should call you." She pulled him into a hug that smelled of Chanel No. 5 and fresh coffee. Come in, come in." The foyer was already different. Boxes labeled in Margaret's neat handwriting lined the walls, and several of Grandpa's antique side tables were wrapped in moving blankets. "You're packing things up already?" Liam asked, unable to keep the edge. From his voice, Margaret's smile faltered slightly. "Well, there's so much to sort through, and Gavin needs to decide what he's keeping before he puts the house on the market. He's selling it, of course, dear. He can't live here, his job's in Boston, and it's far too big for just one person anyway." She guided him into the kitchen, where Uncle James sat at the breakfast nook, surrounded by paperwork. "The prodigal nephew appears," James said, without looking up, his tone making it unclear whether it was a joke or a jab. "I just came to say a proper goodbye to the house," Liam explained, declining Margaret's offer of coffee with a small shake of his head, and to see if Gavin meant what he said about the books. "Oh, he absolutely did," Margaret assured him. "He's upstairs now, going through the master bedroom. Why don't you head up to the study? That's where most of the books are anyway." Liam nodded, grateful for the chance to be alone in his grandfather's sanctuary. The study had always been his favorite room, walls lined with bookshelves. The leather armchair by the window where Grandpa would smoke his pipe until the doctor forbade it. The massive oak desk covered in papers and historical documents. He climbed the familiar staircase, running his hand along the smooth banister. Family photos lined the wall. Gavin's graduation from military academy featured prominently, alongside various family gatherings. Liam appeared in only a handful, always slightly peripheral. The door to the study was ajar. He pushed it open and stood in the doorway, letting the familiar scent of leather-bound books and wood polish wash over him. The room was largely untouched, as if his grandfather had just stepped out momentarily. "Take your time," Gavin's voice came from behind him, making Liam start. "I haven't gotten to this room yet." Liam turned to face his cousin, who was leaning against the doorframe of the master bedroom across the hall, arms crossed over his chest. He wore a faded Harvard Business School t-shirt and jeans, casual weekend attire that somehow still made him look like he belonged in a Ralph Lauren ad. "Thanks," Liam said stiffly. "I won't take much. Just a few books he and I used to discuss." Gavin nodded, watching him with an unreadable expression. "You know," he said finally, "I was surprised too. About the will." Liam's jaw tightened. "Were you?" "Yeah. Grandpa always talked about how smart you were, the intellectual one." Something flickered across Gavin's face. Was it resentment? "I figured he'd leave you his first editions, at least." "Apparently not," Liam said, turning back to the study. "Don't let me keep you from your sorting." After a moment of lingering, Gavin retreated into the master bedroom, leaving Liam alone with his grandfather's collection. The study was exactly as Liam remembered: the heavy velvet curtains, the worn Persian rug, the glass-fronted bookcases filled with everything from ancient classics to modern historical analyses. Liam moved to the desk, running his fingers lightly over its surface. A framed photo caught his eye, one he'd never noticed before. It showed a much younger Robert Foster in military uniform, standing beside a man Liam didn't recognize. They had their arms around each other's shoulders, both grinning widely against a backdrop of what looked like a military base. Liam picked it up, studying the unfamiliar face. As he set it down, he noticed the corner of an envelope peeking out from beneath the desk blotter. He slid it out. It was addressed to his grandfather, the return address from a law firm in Boston he didn't recognize. The envelope had been opened, its contents removed. Curious, Liam began opening desk drawers, searching for the letter that might have been inside. The top drawers yielded nothing unusual: pens, paper clips, a half-empty pack of peppermints, but when he tried the bottom right drawer, it was locked. He knelt down, examining the lock. It was small, simple, the kind that required a desk key his grandfather had always kept on his keyring. Liam sat back on his heels, disappointed. That's when he noticed a slight discoloration in the wooden baseboard behind the desk. Standing, he moved the heavy desk chair aside and crouched down for a closer look. It wasn't a discoloration at all, but a seam. A perfectly rectangular seam in the wood, taut, heart-quickening. Liam pressed his fingers against it. The panel gave slightly. He applied more pressure, and suddenly it popped inward, revealing a small cavity in the wall. Inside lay a single brass key. "What the hell?" he whispered, reaching in to retrieve it. The key was old, its design ornate. Not for the desk drawer. He turned it over in his palm, then glanced at the locked drawer again. On a hunch, he tried the key in the drawer lock. It didn't fit. "Finding everything okay?" Gavin's voice called from across the hall. "Yeah," Liam answered quickly, slipping the key into his pocket. "Just reminiscing." He selected a few books from the shelves. A first edition of Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States that he and Grandpa had debated hotly. A worn copy of the Histories by Herodotus with his grandfather's notes in the margins, and a more recent book on Revolutionary War tactics that they'd discussed during Liam's last visit. As he collected the books, his eyes swept the room, looking for anything that might require the mysterious key. There were no obvious locks, no hint of hidden compartments. Whatever the key opened, it wasn't immediately visible. "I think I'm good," Liam called out, tucking the books into his messenger bag. "Just taking these 3. Gavin appeared in the doorway. "That's it. There's like 1,000 books in here. These are the ones that matter to me," Liam said. "They have his notes in them." Something like understanding passed across Gavin's face. Right, his commentary was always ... extensive. He had strong opinions, Liam agreed. Surprised to find himself almost smiling at the shared knowledge of their grandfather's passionate annotations. "Listen," Gavin said, running a hand through his short hair. "Mum and Dad are talking about having a family dinner tomorrow night. Sort of a last meal in the house before we really start dismantling things. You should come." The invitation seemed genuine, which somehow made it harder to accept. "I'll think about it," Liam said, non-committally. Downstairs, he made his goodbyes to Margaret and James, enduring another of his aunt's perfumed hugs and his uncle's distracted handshake. The brass key felt heavy in his pocket, a secret weight pulling at him. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn. Liam glanced back at the house, at the second-floor window of the study where he'd spent so many hours with his grandfather. Something didn't add up: the will, the hidden key, the locked drawer he hadn't been able to open. As he walked to his car, a voice called out from next door. "You must be Robert's other grandson." Liam turned to see an elderly woman leaning on a cane at the edge of the neighboring property. Mrs. Chungramper's neighbor for at least 20 years. "Yes, ma'am, Liam Foster. He spoke of you often," she said, her eyes sharp despite her advanced age. "The professor, the one who asks questions." Liam moved closer to the white picket fence separating the properties. "Did he?" Mrs. Chen nodded, solemnly. "Oh yes. Especially these last few months, always showing me articles from the university paper when you were mentioned." She tilted her head, studying him. "He was proud of you, you know." In his way, the simple statement hit Liam like a physical blow. "Thank you for telling me that," he managed. "He was working on something," she continued, her voice lowering slightly. "Late at night, I could see the light in his study at all hours. Started after that man came to visit." "What man?" "Tall fellow, military bearing, like Robert. Came 3, maybe 4 times in February and March. Always very late, and they'd talk for hours in the study." Liam thought of the photograph he'd seen his grandfather and the unidentified man in uniform. "Did you catch his name?" Mrs. Chen shook her head. Never introduced us. But after he started coming around, that's when Robert began staying up all night in the study. Said he was setting things right before time ran out. A chill ran down Liam's spine that had nothing to do with the autumn breeze. When was the last time you saw this man? About a week before Robert passed, Mrs. Chen said. They argued that night. I could hear their voices through my window, not the words, just the tone, sharp, angry. She tapped her cane thoughtfully against the ground. After that, Robert changed the locks on the house. Before Liam could ask another question, the front door of 1842 Evergreen opened, and Margaret called out from the porch. Mrs. Chen, would you like to come in for some tea? We're sorting through Robert's china and thought you might like to have the Japanese set he always said you admired. Mrs. Chen straightened slightly. That would be lovely, Margaret. She gave Liam a significant look. Your grandfather was a complex man, Professor Foster. Don't judge him too quickly. As the elderly woman made her slow way around the fence to his aunt, Liam stood frozen, the brass key burning a hole in his pocket. What had his grandfather been setting right? Who was the mysterious visitor? And most importantly, what did the key unlock? He drove home in a daze, the 3 borrowed books beside him, his mind racing with possibilities. Back in his modest apartment, near the university campus, he spread the books on his kitchen table and examined them carefully, looking for any hidden notes or markings that might explain the key. Nothing. Frustrated, he pulled out the key and studied it under the bright kitchen light. It was old-fashioned, possibly handmade, with intricate scrollwork on the bow. Definitely not a standard door or cabinet key. Liam set it down beside the books and ran both hands through his hair. Whatever his grandfather had been hiding, whatever secret had been important enough to conceal behind a loose baseboard. Liam was certain of one thing: the key was meant for him to find. Why else hide it in the study, the one room in the house where Liam felt most at home? He picked up his phone and opened his contacts, scrolling until he found the name he was looking for. Emily Winters, the university archivist he'd consulted several times for his research. If anyone would recognize an unusual key, it would be Emily. His thumb hovered over her number. It was Saturday night. Calling now would seem strange, possibly intrusive, but the mystery pulled at him, making everything else feel trivial in comparison. Making his decision, Liam pressed call. As the phone rang, he picked up the key again, turning it over and over in his fingers like a talisman. Hello, Emily's voice came through, slightly puzzled. They weren't exactly friends, just friendly colleagues. Emily, it's Liam Foster. I'm sorry to call on a weekend, but I've found something I think you might be able to help me identify. As he began to explain, the brass key caught the light, gleaming like a golden promise of answers to come. Chapter 3. The Archives. I've never seen anything quite like it, Emily Winters said, turning the brass key over in her slender fingers. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the high windows of the university archives caught in her dark hair, illuminating subtle auburn highlights Liam had never noticed before. They sat at a wooden table in the back corner of the archives, surrounded by tall shelves of leather-bound records and acid-free boxes. The space smelled of old paper and wood polish, a scent Liam had always found comforting. The craftsmanship suggests pre-1950s, Emily continued, examining the key through a small magnifying glass. See this scrollwork pattern? It's consistent with decorative metalwork from the 1930s and 40s. She pointed to tiny markings near the bow. And these numbers, here they look like a manufacturer's code. Liam leaned closer, his shoulder nearly touching hers. Can you make it out? 7-40 to -19, she read. Could be a date, could be a serial number. She set down the magnifying glass and looked at him directly. Her dark eyes were thoughtful behind tortoiseshell glasses. You said you found this hidden in your grandfather's study. Liam nodded, suddenly aware of how strange his story must sound. He'd called Emily the previous night, explaining as briefly as possible about finding the key and his suspicions that it might open something important. To his surprise, she'd suggested meeting at the archives the very next day. It was behind a loose baseboard, he explained. Deliberately hidden, not just dropped there by accident. Emily handed the key back to him, her expression curious. And you have no idea what it might open? None. Liam turned the key in his fingers, a habit he'd developed over the last 18 hours. But my grandfather's neighbor mentioned he'd been setting things right before he died. And then there was this mysterious visitor, ... The military man in the photograph, Emily supplied, showing she'd been listening carefully to his rambling explanation. Right, and then Grandpa changes the locks right after their argument. Liam shook his head. It feels significant. It does, Emily agreed. She pushed her glasses up her nose, a gesture Liam had seen countless times during their previous consultations. About historical documents, have you checked the obvious places, safe deposit boxes at his bank, a home safe? I don't have access to his bank accounts, those all went to my cousin. The bitterness in his voice surprised even him. As for a home safe, I've never seen one in the house, but I haven't exactly had the chance to search thoroughly. Emily was quiet for a moment, tapping her fingers thoughtfully on the table. The numbers could be a combination, she suggested. Finally, 7 minus 40 to minus 19. Maybe for a safe or a lockbox. Liam considered this. Possibly, but where would the safe be? And why leave me the key if the safe has a combination lock? Perhaps it's both, Emily ventured. Some older safes required both a key and a combination. The possibility ignited a spark of hope in Liam's chest. I need to search the house again. Won't your cousin be there? They're having a last family dinner tonight. I'm invited. Liam grimaced. I wasn't planning to go, but now, ... you have to, Emily finished for him. It's your chance to look around. Liam nodded, slipping the key back into his pocket. I just wish I knew what I was looking for. The house is huge, and if Grandpa went to the trouble of hiding the key, ... he probably hid the safe too, Emily said. She bit her lower lip, a gesture that drew Liam's attention momentarily to her mouth. You know, I've done some archival work on historical homes in New Haven. Many of the older houses, especially colonials like you described, had hidden compartments or concealed safes. It was common during Prohibition and even afterward. Do you know where they typically put them? Behind paintings is classic, of course, but also under floorboards in closets, behind false walls in chimneys, under staircases, ... She trailed off, then added, Actually, I have a book that might help. Wait here. Emily disappeared into the maze of shelves, returning minutes later with a large volume titled Architectural Secrets of New England. Homes, 1850 to 1950. She set it on the table and began flipping through its pages. Here, she said finally, pointing to a diagram, this shows common hiding places in colonial-style homes. Your grandfather's house was built when 1842, according to the address. Emily's eyebrows rose. That's unusually specific. It's not the actual address. It's 287 Evergreen Avenue. 1842 was the year it was built, and Grandpa was always proud of that. He used to joke that the house was older than most countries. Interesting, Emily murmured, turning back to the book. A house that old might have even more hiding places than those listed here. Secret rooms weren't uncommon in houses from that period. Liam studied the diagrams, trying to visualize his grandfather's house overlaid with these architectural secrets. I remember there being a small door in his study that I always thought led to an attic space. I never saw it opened. That's worth investigating, Emily said. She glanced at her watch. What time is dinner? 7. It's nearly 4 now. You should go home and prepare. She closed the book and slid it across the table to him. Take this, it might help. Liam stared at the book, then at Emily. I can't check this out, it's part of the archives. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Consider it an unofficial loan to a faculty member. For research purposes, thank you, Liam said, genuinely touched by her willingness to bend the rules. For everything. I know this isn't exactly how you planned to spend your Sunday. Emily shrugged, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. Actually, this is the most interesting thing that's happened in the archives all month. Most of my Sundays involve cataloging donation boxes full of somebody's gratins, grocery lists, from the 1980s. Liam laughed, surprising himself. It was the first time he'd laughed since before the will reading. Besides, Emily continued, her voice softer, you're one of the few professors who actually treats the archives with respect. Most of your colleagues act like I'm a glorified librarian. Their loss, Liam said, meaning it. He'd always appreciated Emily's encyclopedic knowledge and dry wit during his research visits. I should get going. I'll let you know what I find. You'd better, she replied. I'm invested now. As Liam gathered the book and stood to leave, Emily added, and Liam, whatever you find, be careful. People don't usually hide things unless they have a good reason. The house looked different in the evening light, more imposing, its white columns and black shutters stark against the darkening sky. Liam sat in his car across the street, watching as his uncle's Mercedes and his cousin's BMW sat parked in the circular driveway. The brass key felt heavy in his pocket, and Emily's book rested on the passenger seat beside him. He'd spent the afternoon studying the diagrams, comparing them to his memories of the house. The most promising locations seemed to be the study specifically. The small door he'd mentioned to Emily and the area behind the fireplace in the formal living room. Both would be difficult to search discreetly during a family dinner. Taking a deep breath, Liam grabbed the bottle of wine he'd brought as a pretense and crossed the street. Before he could knock, the door swung open to reveal Gavin, dressed in a blue button-down that made his eyes look even bluer than usual. You came, Gavin said, sounding genuinely pleased. Mum will be thrilled. Couldn't miss the last dinner, Liam replied, handing over the wine. How's the packing going? Slowly, Gavin led him into the house, where the smell of Margaret's famous pot roast filled the air. Mum keeps getting sidetracked by old photo albums. Dad's ready to just hire a service and be done with it. The dining room was set with Grandpa's best china, the set he'd only used for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Margaret bustled in from the kitchen, her face lighting up when she saw Liam. You made it, she exclaimed, wiping her hands on her apron. Before embracing him, I was just telling Gavin this morning that you needed to be here for this. Uncle James appeared from the living room, tumbler of scotch in hand. Liam, he acknowledged with a nod. Drink before dinner. I'm fine for now. Thanks, Liam said, scanning the room surreptitiously. No obvious hiding places in the dining room, but he hadn't expected any. Well, we're just about ready, Margaret announced. Gavin, would you help me bring in the vegetables? As Gavin followed his mother to the kitchen, James settled into the head chair Grandpa's chair. Liam noted with a twinge of irritation. How's the academic life treating you? James asked, his tone suggesting he found the question obligatory rather than interesting. Well enough, Liam answered, taking his seat on the side of the table. I'm up for tenure next year. James nodded, taking a sip of his scotch. Robert always thought you'd do well in academia. Said you had the mind for it. He paused, though he worried it wouldn't challenge you enough. Before Liam could respond to this unexpected insight, Margaret and Gavin returned with steaming dishes of pot roast, roasted potatoes, and green beans. The conversation shifted to safer topics: the weather, local news, Margaret's garden club. Throughout the meal, Liam's mind kept returning to the key in his pocket and the potential hiding places. Throughout the house, how could he excuse himself to search without arousing suspicion? His opportunity came as Margaret served coffee and apple pie in the living room after dinner. Would you mind if I used Grandpa's bathroom upstairs? Liam asked casually. The downstairs one always had those water pressure issues. Of course, dear, Margaret said. You know where everything is. Liam climbed the stairs, hyper-aware of every creak in the old wood. Instead of turning toward the bathroom, he slipped into his grandfather's study. Closing the door quietly behind him, the room was darker now, illuminated only by the streetlight filtering through the curtains. Liam pulled out his phone and switched on the flashlight, sweeping its beam across the bookshelves, the desk, the walls, There in the corner behind the desk was the small door he remembered. It was about 3 feet high, painted the same color as the wainscoting with a simple metal handle. Liam approached it, heart pounding, and tried the handle. Locked. He pulled out the brass key, studying it in the flashlight's glow. It seemed too ornate for such a simple door, but he tried it anyway. It didn't fit. Frustrated, Liam turned his attention to the rest of the room. According to Emily's book, safes were often hidden behind books on shelves. He ran his flashlight along the rows of volumes, looking for any that seemed out of place or unusually deep. A soft knock at the door made him jump. Liam, Gavin's voice. You okay in there? Fine, Liam called back, hastily pocketing the key. Just saying goodbye to the study. The door opened, and Gavin stepped in, flipping on the overhead light. His eyes narrowed slightly as he took in Liam's position by the bookshelves. Finding more books to take. Just looking, Liam said, trying to sound casual. Lots of memories in this room. Gavin nodded, moving further into the study. Yeah, I used to hate coming in here as a kid. Always felt like I was being judged for not reading enough. He ran his fingers along the spines of a shelf of leather-bound classics. Grandpa would quiz you on these, wouldn't he? The question caught Liam off guard. Sometimes, you knew about that. He mentioned it once. Said you were the only one who could keep up with his literary references. Gavin's tone was unreadable, somewhere between admiration and resentment. Anyway, Mum sent me to check on you. The pie's getting cold. I'll be right down, Liam promised. Gavin lingered, his eyes moving around the room, as if seeing it differently now that it was his. You know, I'm not planning to keep most of this stuff. The books, the artifacts, they don't mean much to me, but they meant something to him. He paused, watching Liam carefully. And to you? Some of them did, Liam admitted. Gavin seemed to make a decision. Listen, I'm heading back to Boston tomorrow. Why don't you come by in the morning before I leave? Take whatever you want from this room. Books, the desk, whatever. It should go to someone who actually cares about it. The offer was surprisingly generous, and for a moment, Liam forgot about the key and the secret he was trying to uncover. Are you serious? Yeah, Gavin shrugged. What am I going to do with first editions of Herodotus? Display them in my condo to impress dates. He smiled slightly. Besides, Grandpa would have wanted you to have them. The statement hung in the air between them, contradicting the reality of the will, but somehow feeling more true than the legal document had. Thank you, Liam said simply. Don't mention it, especially to Dad. He thinks we should auction everything. Gavin headed for the door. Coming down in a minute, Liam promised. As Gavin left, Liam quickly scanned the rest of the room. His attention caught by a large painting above the fireplace, a naval battle scene that had hung there for as long as he could remember. According to Emily's book, paintings often concealed wall safes. He'd have to come back tomorrow to check. With Gavin's unexpected permission, he'd have the freedom to search the study thoroughly. Downstairs. The evening concluded with strained pleasantries and promises to stay in touch that everyone knew would be broken. As Liam was leaving, Margaret pressed a framed photo into his hands, a picture of Liam and his grandfather at Liam's college graduation. He kept this on his bedside table, she said softly. I thought you should have it. The revelation left Liam speechless. He managed to thank you before walking back to his car, the photo clutched in one hand, the mystery of the key burning even more brightly in his mind. I think I need to go back to basics, Liam said. Pacing back and forth in Emily's small office at the university archives the next morning. I've been assuming the key opens something hidden. But what if it's more obvious? Emily looked up from her computer, where she'd been researching antique key designs. What do you mean? The numbers on the key 074219. What if they're not a combination? What if they're a date? July 42, 1919. July doesn't have 42 days, Emily pointed out. Right, but Liam stopped pacing. What if it's a military date format? My grandfather was in the service. July 19, 1942. Emily's eyes widened. That would have been during World War II. Exactly. And the man in the photo with Grandpa was wearing a military uniform. Liam resumed pacing. I need to find out what happened on that date. It could be important. I can help with that, Emily offered, already typing. The archives have digital access to military records and newspapers from that period. She looked up at him. What time are you meeting Gavin at the house? 10 o'clock. I have about an hour. Emily nodded, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Let's see what we can find before then. 20 minutes later, they had their first lead. A small newspaper article from July 19, 1942, mentioned a covert operation in the Pacific Theater involving a unit that included then-Lieutenant Robert Foster. The details are vague, Emily said, reading from the screen. Military censorship was heavy during the war, but it mentions that Lieutenant Foster's unit was responsible for intercepting enemy communications and that their actions significantly contributed to Allied intelligence efforts. Grandpa was in intelligence. This was news to Liam. He never talked much about his service, just that he'd been in the Pacific. Many veterans didn't, Emily said softly. Especially those in sensitive positions. Liam checked his watch. I need to go. Gavin will be waiting. He hesitated, then asked, Would you like to come with me? An extra set of eyes might help, and you know more about hidden compartments in old houses than I do. Emily looked surprised, then pleased. I'd like that. Let me grab my bag. As they drove to Evergreen Avenue, Liam filled Emily in on the previous night's dinner and Gavin's unexpected offer. That's oddly generous, Emily observed, considering he got everything in the will. Maybe he feels guilty, Liam suggested, turning onto his grandfather's street. Or maybe he really doesn't care about the books and artifacts. Gavin's BMW was in the driveway when they arrived, along with a large moving truck. Men in uniforms were carrying wrapped furniture out the front door. You're just in time, Gavin called from the porch as Liam and Emily approached. They're starting with the downstairs furniture. His eyes moved curiously to Emily. This is Emily Winters, Liam introduced her. She's the university archivist. I thought she might help identify some of the historical documents Grandpa kept. Smart, Gavin nodded appreciatively. Nice to meet you, Emily. The study's all yours. I've told the movers to leave it for last. Take whatever you want, seriously. As Gavin turned to direct the movers, Liam and Emily slipped upstairs to the study. The room felt different in the morning light, mysterious, but no less rich with potential secrets. Where should we start? Emily asked, surveying the space with professional interest. The painting, Liam said decisively, moving to the naval battle scene above the fireplace. In your book, it said paintings often hide safes. Together, they carefully lifted the heavy frame from its hooks. Behind it was only solid wall. Damn, Liam muttered. I was sure. Let's be systematic, Emily suggested. I'll check the bookshelves for false backs. You look for loose floorboards or panels. They worked in focused silence, occasionally exchanging observations. Emily methodically removed books from shelves, checking the spaces behind them, while Liam tapped along the wainscoting, listening for hollow spots. It was Emily who found the first clue. Liam, she called softly. Look at this. She was holding a book, not one of the valuable first editions, but a worn military history of World War II. A bookmark protruded from its pages. The bookmark has something written on it, she said, handing it to him. It was a simple paper bookmark, yellowed with age. Written in what Liam recognized as his grandfather's precise handwriting were the words, Remember, July 19th. July 19th, Liam repeated. Like the date on the key, open to the marked page, Emily suggested. The book was open to a chapter about intelligence operations in the Pacific. A paragraph had been underlined. Naval intelligence units stationed in the Philippines were instrumental in decoding Japanese communications, particularly after the discovery of encoding devices in captured enemy vessels. These decryption efforts saved countless Allied lives and shortened the war by months, if not years. Grandpa was stationed in the Philippines, Liam said slowly. He had a photo somewhere. He moved to the desk, pulling open drawers until he found a small album. Flipping through it, he stopped at a black-and-white photograph of a group of men standing in front of a tropical building. His grandfather was there, young and serious-looking. Along with the man from the framed photo he'd seen earlier, scrawled on the back was, Intelligence Unit 7, Manila, 1942. And below it, a list of names. Liam read them aloud. Lt. Robert Forster, Lt. James Mitchell, CPL, Henry Davis, ... Wait, Emily interrupted. James Mitchell, isn't that your uncle's name? Liam stared at her, then back at the photo. Yes, but this can't be him. He'd be too young. Maybe his father. He examined the face more carefully. There was a definite resemblance to Uncle James, but the man in the photo was a stranger to Liam. The plot thickens, Emily murmured. Keep looking. They returned to their systematic search, but found nothing else of note until Liam reached the small door in the corner behind the desk. This is locked, he told Emily, and my key doesn't fit. Emily knelt beside him, examining the door. This looks like a standard latch lock, not something that would need your ornate key. She glanced around. Is there a letter opener or something? Thin, we could try. Liam found a metal ruler in the desk drawer. Under Emily's guidance, he slid it into the crack beside the lock and applied pressure. After a moment of resistance, the lock gave way with a soft click. I'm impressed, Liam said. Emily smiled. Archivists have many skills. The small door swung open to reveal a shallow closet space. It was empty, except for a stack of old hat boxes. On a high shelf, help me get those down, Liam said, pointing to the hat boxes. Together, they carefully removed the dusty boxes and set them on the desk. The first two contained actual hats, vintage military caps that had belonged to his grandfather. The third box was heavier. Liam removed the lid to find a small metal box inside, not quite a safe, but a lockbox with a keyhole that looked promising. This could be it, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He removed the brass key from his pocket and slid it into the lock. It fit perfectly. With a deep breath, Liam turned the key. The lock clicked open. Chapter 4. The Truth. The hinges of the metal box creaked slightly as Liam lifted the lid. Emily leaned closer, her shoulder pressing against his as they both peered inside. Letters, Liam said, his voice hushed with anticipation. And photographs. The box contained a stack of yellowed envelopes tied together with faded blue ribbon. Several loose photographs, and at the bottom, a small leather journal. Liam carefully lifted out the bundle of letters, noting that they were addressed to his grandfather in a flowing script he didn't recognize. These date back to 1942, Emily observed, looking at the postmark on the top envelope. From the Philippines, Liam untied the ribbon with careful fingers and selected the earliest letter. The paper was thin and delicate, the ink slightly faded but still legible. He began to read aloud, My dearest Robert, I write this, not knowing if it will reach you, or if you will ever forgive me for what happened. The attack came without warning. Commander Hayes believes someone betrayed our position, but I cannot bring myself to believe any of our unit capable of such treachery. 3 men lost, Robert. 3 good men. And the encoding device gone, if they manage to destroy it before we can recover it. All our work these past months will be for nothing. I know you blame James for the security breach. Perhaps you are right to do so. His carelessness has cost us dearly before. But I beg you not to report your suspicions to Hayes until you have concrete evidence. A man's career, his very life, hangs in the balance. With deepest regards, Edward Mitchell, Emily repeated. Another relative of your uncle's. Must be, Leah murmured, already reaching for the next letter in the stack. Maybe his father, like I guessed. The second letter was dated 2 weeks later, its tone more urgent. Robert, your accusations against James have reached Commander Hayes. I understand your certainty, but without proof, this remains a dangerous game. James swears he is innocent, and without evidence, it is your word against his. The recovery mission leaves at dawn. Hayes has ordered both you and James to participate. perhaps hoping the truth will reveal itself in the field. I fear what may happen if you two are alone together in enemy territory. Please, for the sake of our friendship and all we have endured together, exercise caution. If James is indeed the traitor you believe him to be, he will reveal himself in time. With concern, Edward Liam's hands trembled slightly as he set the letter down. Grandpa suspected someone named James Mitchell of being a traitor during the war. He looked at Emily, whose eyes were wide behind her glasses. That can't be a coincidence. Keep reading, she urged quietly. The third letter was different. In a hasty scrawl, the paper wrinkled as if it had once been crumpled. Robert, they are saying, you tried to kill him. James is in the medical tent with a bullet in his shoulder, delirious with fever, repeating over and over that you left him behind. Deliberately, that you shot him when he discovered you taking the encoding device. I don't believe it. I cannot believe it. Not after all our years of friendship. Hayes has ordered your arrest pending investigation. I've convinced him to delay until James is coherent enough to give a proper statement. You have 48 hours, Robert. Use them wisely. Whatever the truth is, know that I am still your friend. Edward, my God, Emily whispered. Your grandfather was accused of attempted murder and treason. Liam's mind was racing. Could this really be his grandfather, the quiet, principled man who'd taught him chess and discussed ethics late into the night? The man who'd always emphasized the importance of honor and truth. With unsteady hands, he reached for the journal at the bottom of the box. The leather was cracked with age, the pages yellowed. Inside, in his grandfather's unmistakable handwriting, was what appeared to be a personal account of the events. July 21st, 1942. I'm writing this account, knowing I may not survive to clear my name. The facts must be recorded somewhere, by someone who witnessed the truth. James Mitchell is a traitor. I have suspected it for months. Small discrepancies in his reports. Unexplained absences, coded messages that never reached headquarters. But suspicion is not proof, and Edward urged caution. 2 days ago, during the recovery mission, I caught him. Not just passing information, but attempting to deliver the encoding device itself to a Japanese officer. When confronted, he drew his weapon. We struggled. The gun discharged, striking him in the shoulder. He fell, and in the chaos that followed gunfire from the nearby Japanese patrol, our forced retreat, I had to make an impossible choice. Drag an injured traitor back through enemy lines, or secure the encoding device that could save thousands of Allied lives. I chose the latter, believing a patrol would follow to retrieve James. I did not know then that he would survive to twist the truth, to claim I had betrayed him, that I had taken the device for myself. Now I am a fugitive in my own camp, with only hours before they come for me. Edward believes me. But his belief is not enough against James's lies and the commanding officer's suspicions. If I do not survive to tell the truth, perhaps someday this journal will. Robert Forster, Lieutenant, United States Naval Intelligence. The study was silent as Liam finished reading. Outside, they could hear the movers working, the occasional shout or thud from downstairs, but in that moment, the sounds seemed to come from another world entirely. There's more, Emily said softly, pointing to the next entry. Liam turned the page. July 25, 1942, Edward saved my life. He helped me escape before the military police came, provided me with civilian clothes and enough money to make it to the coast. From there, I will attempt to reach Australia and contact Naval Intelligence Headquarters directly. Before I left, Edward promised to watch James, to gather evidence of his betrayal. He fears for his own safety. Know if James realizes Edward helped me escape, he may become the next target. Alive, the truth will come out. If not, I pray this journal finds its way to someone who can finish what I've started. RF. The final entry was dated nearly a year later, June 10, 1943. It is done. After months in hiding, after nearly dying of malaria in the jungle, after being picked up half-dead by an Australian patrol boat, I have been exonerated. The encoding device I rescued has proven invaluable to the Allied cryptography efforts. More importantly, Edward managed to obtain irrefutable evidence of James's collaboration with the anemia coded logbook detailing every piece of intelligence he sold. James Mitchell has been court-martialed and convicted of treason. Due to the sensitive nature of our unit's work, the trial was conducted in secret. The official record states only that he was killed in action in the Philippines. His name will not appear on any list of traitors. His crime known only to those directly involved. This was deemed necessary to protect ongoing intelligence operations. I have been promoted to captain and reassigned to a desk position in Hawaii. Far from the front lines, the commander apologized for doubting me, but the damage is done. I cannot forget those days as a hunted man, suspected of the very crimes my enemy committed. Edward writes that he is returning to Connecticut soon. His wife is expecting their first child. He has suggested I might join him there after the war, start fresh in a place where no one knows our history. Perhaps I will. Captain Robert Forster. Liam closed the journal, his mind reeling. James Mitchell was convicted of treason, he said slowly. And then his death was faked to protect military intelligence operations. But if he died in 1943, Emily began. Then he can't be my uncle, Liam finished. Unless, a cold realization washed over him. He reached back into the box and pulled out the loose photographs. Most were military scenesmen in uniform, tropical landscapes, naval vessels. But one photo stood out. A family portrait, clearly taken after the war. His grandfather stood beside a woman Liam recognized as his grandmother, holding an infant. Beside them was Edward Mitchell with his own wife and young child. Liam turned the photo over. Written on the back was Robert and Helen Foster with baby William, Edward and Margaret Mitchell with James Jr. 1947 James Jr., Liam repeated, his voice hollow. My uncle isn't the original James Mitchell, he's the son. Named after a traitor. Emily said softly, Did your uncle know? Liam shook his head, trying to process the implications. I don't think so. If the trial was kept secret, if the official record showed James Sr. as killed in action rather than executed for treason, then Edward might have hidden the truth, even from his own family, Emily concluded. But Grandpa knew, Liam said, and apparently, he kept in touch with Edward's family even after the war. He looked at the photo again. They must have been close, despite everything. Close enough that your grandfather watched James Jr. your uncle grow up, Emily added. And eventually, Uncle James married Aunt Margaret and had Gavin, Liam finished. And all that time, Grandpa knew he was the son of the man who had nearly destroyed him. A heavy silence fell between them as the full weight of the revelation settled in. Finally, Emily spoke. Why hide this now though? Why leave you the key to find all this after he died? Liam returned to the box, searching for anything they might have missed. At the very bottom, beneath where the journal had been, was a final envelope newer than the others, the paper crisp and white. It was addressed simply, for Liam. His hands shaking slightly, Liam opened it and unfolded the single sheet inside. The handwriting was shakier than in the journal entries, but unmistakably his grandfather's. My dear Liam, if you are reading this, then you have found the key and followed the trail I left for you. I always knew you would. You have the same instinct for truth that I cultivated in my years in intelligence work. I am sorry for the pain my will may have caused you. Leaving everything to Gavin was necessary to ensure you would search for answers, rather than simply accepting what appeared to be my final wishes. I needed you to find this box, these letters, this truth, because you are the only one I trust to decide what should be done with it. 3 months ago, a man visited McColonel Henry Davis, the last surviving member of my old unit besides myself. He brought disturbing news. Classified documents from our time in the Philippines are scheduled to be declassified next year. When that happens, the truth about James Mitchell Sr. will become public knowledge. Henry offered to help suppress the records, to protect Edward's family from the shame of their patriarch's betrayal. I refused. The truth, however painful, should not remain buried forever. This puts you in an impossible position. Liam, your uncle, his wife, your cousin, none of them know that James Sr. was a traitor whose actions led to the deaths of Allied servicemen. Learning this would devastate them, destroy the family legacy they believe in. Yet concealing the truth feels equally wrong. It has weighed on me all these years watching James Jr. grow up, believing his father died a hero, seeing him name his own son after that same father, hearing him speak with pride of a man who betrayed everything I held sacred. I leave the decision to you. Liam. You alone have the wisdom and compassion to choose rightly. The declassification is scheduled for July 19, 2025, 83 years to the day after James's betrayal. You have until then to decide whether to prepare your family for the truth, or to work with Henry to ensure those records never see the light of day. His contact information is enclosed. Whatever you choose, know that I have always been proud of you, more than words can express. You are my true heir in all the ways that matter. With love and trust, Grandpa Robert. Liam let the letter fall to his lap, overwhelmed. Emily placed a gentle hand on his arm, saying nothing, simply offering silent support as he processed the enormity of what he'd discovered. Next July, he finally said, "That's when the documents become public. That's why he hid the key, why he wrote this letter." "He's giving you a choice," Emily said softly. "Protect your family from a painful truth, or let history be told accurately, no matter the cost." Liam looked down at the photographs, the letters, the journal, the evidence of a decades-old betrayal, and the courage it took to stand against it. His grandfather had trusted him with this legacy, believed in his ability to make the right choice. "What are you going to do?" Emily asked. Before Liam could answer, footsteps sounded in the hallway outside the study. The door opened, and Gavin peered, his expression curious. "Find anything interesting?" he asked, glancing at the papers spread across the desk. "The movers are ready to start in here whenever you're done." Liam looked at his cousin, the grandson of a traitor, a man who had lived his entire life believing a lie about his family history. The declassification was less than a year away. The truth would come out, one way or another. But was it Liam's place to be the one to tell it? "Just some old war letters," Liam said carefully, gathering the papers. "Grandpa kept quite a collection." Gavin nodded, seemingly uninterested. "Take them if you want. Like I said, anything in this room is yours." He checked his watch. "I need to head back to Boston soon. You okay to lock up when you're done?" "Yeah," Liam said. "Thanks, Gavin, for this." He gestured to the room. "It means a lot." "Don't mention it," Gavin replied with a casual shrug. "Glad it's going to someone who appreciates it." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Mum wanted me to remind you about Thanksgiving. She's insisting the whole family gets together this year, especially now that Grandpa's gone. Says it's more important than ever." With that, he was gone, leaving Liam and Emily alone with the weight of history between them. "Thanksgiving," Liam repeated quietly, "the whole family together." Emily's eyes met his, understanding dawning in their depths. "Maybe that's your answer," she said. "Not whether to tell them, but when, how." Liam looked down at his grandfather's letter again, at the trust placed in him to make the right choice. The past couldn't be changed, but perhaps the future, how his family would face this revelation, was still in his hands. "I have some time," he said finally. "Time to figure out the right way to tell them, to help them understand." Emily nodded, her hand still resting on his arm. "And you don't have to do it alone." The offer hung in the air between them, tentative but sincere. Liam covered her hand with his own, grateful for her presence, for the unexpected connection that had formed. Through this journey into his family's past. Outside, they heard the front door close as Gavin left. The house was quiet now, the movers apparently taking a break. In that moment of stillness, surrounded by the evidence of his grandfather's life and secrets, Liam made his decision. "I want to know more," he said. "About Grandpa, about what happened after the war, about how he lived with this knowledge all these years." He looked at Emily. "Will you help me?" Her smile was warm, her eyes bright with the thrill of historical discovery. and something more personal. I can't think of anything I'd rather do, she answered. Chapter 5. The legacy. The soft glow of the fire cast dancing shadows across Liam's living room. Outside, New Haven was blanketed in the first snow of winter, transforming the university campus into a postcard-perfect scene. Liam sat on his couch, surrounded by carefully organized stacks of papers, photographs, and journal entries, the physical remnants of his grandfather's extraordinary life. "I think this one goes with the 1950s pile," Emily said, passing him a faded photograph of his grandfather in a suit, standing beside a distinguished-looking man at what appeared to be a government building. Over the past 6 weeks, she had become a constant presence in his apartment, their shared mission to piece together Robert Foster's story evolving into something neither had initially anticipated. What began as professional courtesy had bloomed into late-night conversations that drifted far beyond historical research, takeout dinners that stretched into the early morning hours, and a deepening connection that felt both surprising and inevitable. "That's Senator Harrison," Liam noted, examining the photo. According to Grandpa's calendar, they met several times between 1953 and 1956. He placed the photo in its chronological position. "I'm guessing it had something to do with his consulting work for the government after he left active service." Emily nodded, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear as she examined another document. "The timeline is coming together nicely. Naval intelligence during the war, then the CIA's predecessor organization in the late 40s, private consultant through the 50s, and finally settling into that finance job that everyone in your family thought was his only career. A cover story," Liam said with a hint of wonder. "For decades, he let everyone believe he was just a successful investment manager who'd had a brief military career, while actually shaping American intelligence policy behind the scenes," Emily added. "Your grandfather led an extraordinary double life." Liam reached for his coffee mug, finding it empty. "Want a refill?" he asked, standing. "I'm good," Emily replied, her focus still on the document in her hands. "But Liam, look at this. It's a letter from Edward Mitchell, dated 1972. Liam moved to sit beside her, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her shoulder against his as he read. "Robert James Jr. came to me yesterday with questions about his namesake. He's been researching family history, piecing together fragments of information from old newspapers and military records. He knows something doesn't add up about his father's death. I told him the official story that James Sr. died heroically in a classified operation in the Philippines. What else could I say? That his father betrayed his country. That the man he was named after caused the deaths of his own comrades. But he's persistent, Robert, like his father in that way, though, I pray, in no others. He mentioned applying for access to classified records through his congressional connections. What should I do? The truth would destroy him, destroy Margaret. Yet I fear the lies are becoming too complex to maintain. Your counsel, as always, would be deeply appreciated." "Edward, so your uncle was suspicious, even back then," Emily murmured. "But apparently, he never found answers," Liam replied. "Or if he did, he kept them to himself." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Emily had come to recognize as signaling his frustration. "There's still so much we don't know about what happened after the war. How Grandpa and Edward maintained their friendship. How Uncle James grew up never knowing the truth about his father." Emily rested her hand on his knee, a casual touch that nevertheless sent warmth spreading through him. "We've made incredible progress, Liam. 6 weeks ago, you knew nothing about your grandfather's secret past. Now we've reconstructed much of his life, his real career, his extraordinary courage during the war." Liam covered her hand with his own, a gesture that had become familiar between them. "Thanks to you," he said softly. "I couldn't have made sense of half of this without your expertise." She smiled, her dark eyes reflecting the firelight. "We make a good team. The history professor and the archivist. We should solve historical mysteries more often." There was a lightness in her voice, but something more serious in her eyes that made Liam's heart beat faster. They had been dancing around this growing attraction for weeks. both hesitant to disrupt the easy rhythm of their collaboration. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then, Emily's phone chimed, breaking the spell. She checked the screen and sighed. The archives. There's a pipe leak near the rare manuscript collection. She stood reluctantly. I have to go. Of course, Liam said, rising with her. Manuscripts in peril. Very serious. Her laugh was soft as she gathered her coat and scarf. We're still on for Thanksgiving prep tomorrow, right? You said you wanted to practice what you're going to say to your family, right? Liam confirmed. My place, around 4. I'll cook. Emily raised an eyebrow. You cook. I'll order takeout and transfer it to my own dishes, he admitted. Very convincing. Very, she agreed with a smile, wrapping her scarf around her neck. At the door, she turned back to him. You know, whatever you decide to tell them, I think your grandfather would be proud of how seriously you're taking this responsibility. After she left, Liam returned to the couch, looking at the organized chaos of his grandfather's life spread before him. Tomorrow was November 22nd, exactly 1 week before Thanksgiving, when his family would gather at Aunt Margaret and Uncle James's home in Hartford. 1 week to finalize his decision about how much truth to share, and how to share it. The declassification of the military records was still months away, scheduled for July of next year. He had time to prepare his family gradually, to help them understand the complicated legacy they had inherited. Or, he could contact Colonel Davis, as his grandfather had suggested, and attempt to suppress the records permanently. But, as he looked at the evidence of his grandfather's unwavering commitment to truth, even at great personal cost, Liam knew what Robert Forster would want him to do. Thanksgiving Day dawned clear and cold. The New England sky a brilliant blue above the bare trees. Liam drove toward Hartford with Emily beside him, a folder of carefully selected photographs and documents on the back seat, and his grandfather's leather journal in the inner pocket of his coat. You're quiet, Emily observed as they turned onto the highway. Just rehearsing what I'm going to say, Liam replied. There's no easy way to tell someone their father or grandfather was a traitor. Emily reached across the console to squeeze his hand. Remember what we discussed. Start with Robert's heroism, with the context of the war. Help them understand the full picture before revealing the difficult parts. Liam nodded, grateful once again for her steady presence. It had been his idea to invite her to Thanksgiving, partly because he wanted moral support for the conversation ahead, but mostly because he couldn't imagine spending the holiday without her. When he'd extended the invitation,